Good morning and welcome to another edition of Stroke of Genius with yours truly, Brian Wagner and James Thornton. But I got to tell you today, James is not going to be with us. He is, well, I'm going to read you what he sent me a text. He sent me a text earlier this morning and he said, because I was asking him about the show today, he's like, let's do it next week. And so I asked him if he would bring Hazel on. Hazel is his dog. Hazel's a Labradoodle, and she is beautiful. So you're gonna love it when she gets on here next week. But he's like, no, just today I'd like to unwind and reflect on life. Reflect on life. Don't we all need to do that at times? Just stop what we're doing. And granted, during the pandemic that we're currently in, there's been a lot of time, but there's still people that have gone back to work. They're, in the middle of their work days. They're busy going from here to there. It looks different, obviously, but still, you're still doing what you have to. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at times, we just need to stop what we're doing and ponder life. Ponder what it is that we are going through, ponder what it is we've maybe gone through in the past, and be appreciative of that and rely on the grace of God that we've gotten to where we are. I mean, it's been pretty incredible that so much has happened to both James and myself that we've been able to get to where we are today. So I'm just thankful for all that. So when I ponder life, I think about the last 53 years that I've been on the earth. Up until the age of 10, I think I had a pretty normal life. But after that, it all changed. And it's a great life. I love my life. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I have a beautiful family. I have a beautiful wife. I'm very fortunate to still have my mom on this earth. And there's so much to be thankful for, not to mention my brothers and sisters. But anyway, I'm the youngest, so I get to say it that way. But no, pondering life it's always important. And I think if we can do that, we're going to be able to go forward. So I want you to ponder life, but I also want you to be thinking about your caregivers. So obviously me, I've been through some disabling events in my life. James has as well. And maybe you have additionally. Or possibly you've been on the other side. It can be harder for that person than the person that has the disability. So I want you to think about a few things. I want you to think about when you're a caregiver, what's the most important and valuable thing that you can possibly do. Think about that. From my perspective, the most important thing you could possibly do is to continue to love that person. There are going to be days when that person that needs the care is going to be cantankerous. They're going to be cranky. They're going to be hard to deal with. But you just need to remember to keep on loving that person and not give up on them. Regardless of what they say, regardless of what they do, just keep loving them. That's why you're their caregiver in the first place. So that's number one. Is to be able to do that is really, really important. That sets you up for the remainder. Now, when I talk about being loving that person and loving them no matter what, it's crucial because it all comes back to that. No matter what, it always comes back to love. That's how this show was started. That's how James and I deal with each other every day. It's through love. So when you're giving that care to that person, just remember to always come back to that. If you can, it's really going to help you a lot, and it's going to provide so much better care for that person if you always come back to that core principle of love. Now, a couple other things that I have here. You know, when I think of if there was one thing that I could share with my caregiver that I wish they would have known. I 5 or 6 years ago, I was at a conference that Ohio Health was putting on, and they had this conference. They had a number of speakers there, but the one main speaker, well, the kickoff keynote, was Michael J. Fox, and he has Parkinson's, as you might be aware. But he talked about how at other conferences he's been to, people have asked him questions like, "What is the one thing you would say, if you could, to your caregiver?" And he didn't flinch. He didn't think about it at all. He knew what it was. He would say to my caregiver that, "I want you, if you can always have this conversation, I want you to allow me to do whatever I want to do. So if I want to go skydiving and it's possible, let me go skydiving. If I want to go skiing, water skiing, or downhill skiing, if I want to, let me. If I want to have any other sort of a life, just an event, a joy, if I want to, let me. If you'll let me, then I'm going to continue to live. I'm going to continue to live." And that is, it's one of those things where you can't trade that. You can't trade that for anything. Having somebody that wants to do something that you don't think is right, you don't think is safe, you don't think is proper. I understand, and I appreciate the caregivers in this world. You know, it's great that you've been able to do what you do and to care like you care. But do this or they can't do that. Um, I, I, you can do it, sure, because it makes you feel better. It makes you feel like you're protecting them more. Good morning, Rhonda. She's live. She's listening live, not listening on the recording. Thank you. But you know, if you can allow yourself the space, allow them to live their life the way they want to live it. If they want to go skydiving, I think that's awesome. If they want to go downhill skiing or water skiing, oh, what if they drown? Well, they won't drown. But if they want to, let them and make it as safe as possible for them. Don't put limitations on your patient. I know that's hard to do. It's hard to think about. It's hard to say sometimes. But don't put your limitations on your patient, because they know what they want to do. And if they can verbalize it, or if they can write it, or if they can, tell you what it is, then you got to let them do it. You got to let them do it. That's been one of the most toughest things to get over with some of my caregivers. nothing wrong with my caregiver at all. You know, Connie is phenomenal. Love her, love her, love her. There are times where there are limitations. And I have limitations. And I need to understand what they are. And I don't always know what they are. Huh. And I am pig-headed and I don't accept what they are. So what are you going to do about it? Severing and limiting that person from doing what they want to do, from what they think they can do, it's going to come back to haunt you. So, yes, I'm going to leave it at that. Allow your person, allow the patient, the one with the disability, allow them to do what they want to do. Next thing I have here, don't be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed because of them. You know, I remember, you know, my dad at different parts of his life, he would become incontinent, and you know, he didn't well, he cared, but he didn't care. So it was a hard thing to watch, hard thing to go through. You know, I know that there's people out there that would be embarrassed by that, embarrassed by seeing him that way. But he was out with people. He was out talking to people and sharing, you know, part of him with people. So that inconvenience was not something that he chose to let get between him and other people, get between him and the relationships that he had. So it didn't matter if he wasn't able to be with somebody in person, then he would get with them, you know, over the phone. And it was great to have my dad over the phone. You could always hear him smiling. It was one of the greatest joys I think of my life is to hear my dad talking over the phone, because it was just great. So, having said that, I would say that that's the next piece of this, is to not be embarrassed by the person you're giving care for. So if you don't limit them to anything that they want to do, and if you're not embarrassed by them, then I think I'm sure that the person that is receiving that care is going to lead a much more happy and fulfilled life. So allowing them to do what they're legally allowed to do, I think, is what I wanted to say. You know, from his point of view, that if at all possible, if you can, then you need to, how do I want to say, you need to let that person speak. So, you know, for James, he was unable to speak for, I think it was 3 months, maybe 6, 3 to 6 months, where he wasn't able to speak. When he had a stroke, he was found on the floor after 20 some hours, I believe it was, if I get my facts correct. But he couldn't speak. And he couldn't speak, like I said, for months after that. He had no way of communicating. Yes, he could write things down, although I'm sure that took time as well. But his mind was perfect. You know, he was thinking, well, I think it was perfect, but he knew what he wanted to say, but he just couldn't say it. Something between his linguistic, senses, and, or not senses, but his speaking ability and his brain, there was a disconnect there. And not allowing him, not being able to speak was one of the hardest things he was ever going through, because he knew what he wanted to say. Like right now, if he were here with us, and you know, I know he's planning on being back here next week, But if he were sitting here, he would tell you. He knows what he wants to say. He sends me texts almost every day, and he tells me so much in those texts. But if you were sitting here with him and he was speaking, it wouldn't be the same experience. So I want to encourage you to, as you give care to your person, or if you're the one that's receiving the care, we understand that you're not always able to share what it is that you have in your mind or in your heart. But for a caregiver, if you allow that person as much space as possible, whether that space comes in the form of a handwritten note or whatever the case may be, then I want you to, somebody else is joining us here. So Keenan, hey, good morning, Keenan. How are you this morning? Thank you for joining us. But if you allow them that space to be able to express themselves, I know it's going to make their life so much more enriched. And that's really what this is all about, is to allow them to have the most full life that they possibly can, regardless of their circumstance. And I realize there are some serious issues out there, and I don't want to glance over that. But if you can allow them to have the most full life that they possibly can right now, that's going to make your life much better. It's going to make your life much more fulfilled. And I'm willing to bet you're going to be a much happier person. And I think that's got an awful lot to do with what it is that we're saying today about not only the caregivers, but also the person with the disability. So, having said all that, I think it's great that you're here with me today, learning more about the caregiver side as well as the disability person side. Next week when we come on, we're gonna have a great conversation, I hope, with James. He's planning on bringing Hazel to the call. So we had last week. It was last week. We had a great call just between him and me, where we set up his camera and everything, but we also had Hazel in the picture. So you're going to see Hazel in her full form, and you're going to find out how. And he's probably going to say this as well. People that experience him when he's out for his walk with Hazel, they think that he's taking Hazel for a walk. But James switches that, and he tells you that really Hazel is the one that's taking him for a walk. More than we are the one that's steering. So it's going to be good to have James back next week, and we're going to continue to talk about things that you can do to make your life better here on Earth, and maybe we can talk about what can make your life better after here on Earth. That's all I have for today. I hope you've enjoyed this session where we talk a little bit about the caregivers and what they're experiencing, as well as the person with that disability. So, as always, I appreciate having you on this morning and you joining. Thank you very much. Have a great day and keep one eye on the road. Bye.